students listening for details in SMA Negeri 8 Yogyakarta. This presentation will be delivered by Miss Teresa Claudia Lukita Restianing Tias and Miss Patricia Angelina from Sanata Dharma University. Miss Teresa and Miss Patricia, you have 15 minutes and the time is yours.
Thank you very much, Miss Tia. Miss Tessa, can you start from the first slide?
Is there any problem?
Okay, Miss Tia, apparently Miss Tessa has played the slide from the beginning, but it doesn't appear on the screen. I will try to find the backup file.
Miss, if you're having trouble with the PowerPoint, maybe you can send the PowerPoint to our operator.
Yes.
Or I will hit you up on WhatsApp so that you can send me the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Miss Tia, and I'm sorry for the inconvenience, ladies and gentlemen.
It's okay. Maybe while waiting for Miss Patricia's and Miss Teresa's presentation, we can start with our next presenter instead. Miss Dwi Agustina, would you mind if you start first?
No, no problem at all.
Okay, so we're going to start with the first presentation, which is the students' preferences over teaching platform, material types, and evaluation models in their online classes. This presentation will be delivered by Miss Dwi Agustina from Pekalongan University. Miss Dwi Agustina, you have 15 minutes and the time is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Miss Tia. And could you please help me to show my slides?
Is it
Okay,
showing
yeah.
yet?
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, so good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Here I would like to share with you my research findings from a study that I conducted in Pekalongan University in the beginning of this semester. So next slide, please. So I'm focusing on students' preferences in joining the online classrooms, and I try to find out the teaching platform, material types, and also evaluation models that they would like to have in following the online classes. Okay, Miss Tia, could you please go to the next slide?
Yeah. I'm sorry, Miss. I'm trying to.
It's okay. Yeah. Okay, so as part of the background of the study, I highlight the occurrence or the emergence of the pandemic in our country, especially the COVID-19 pandemic, which has huge impact in our educational practices. So I think it was around March this year that the COVID-19 started to spread in our country, and then universities and schools were closed, especially in the high-risk areas. So the pandemic also forced us to shift from offline teaching into online teaching. And the pandemic never asked us whether we are ready to adapt or to deal with these educational new educational practices. So in my institution, um, the online classes have been implemented for 2 semesters. And at the end of the last semester, my institution has conducted what we call learning evaluation by distributing the survey to measure students' satisfactions in joining the online programs or online classes. And interestingly, the findings or the result reveals that the students had less positive perceptions about the online classes. So in this case, I'm interested to do a further study about the students' perceptions of joining online classes and also their preferences about the teaching platform, materials types, and also the evaluation, especially during the pandemic. Okay, next slide, please, Ms. Tia. Okay, so to me, doing a research about the students' perception and preferences is important to do because if I'm not doing the research, I may not know about what students would like to have in my online classes. I may not know what they want in my classes. So by doing this kind of research, I can prioritize, yeah, I can try to meet students' needs and also try to accommodate their feedback and their wants as well. So I do believe that if we try to listen to our students' voices and try to accommodate their feedback that they give in our classes, then it will create or it can help them to build a more positive perceptions about online classes. So this research can be said as an effort for building students more positive perceptions about online classes, and it is also the effort to describe the constraints and also affordances in online classes. And the last, the research is also an effort to solve the problem in using the online teaching mode. Okay, next please. Okay, so now we are looking at the literature review. So if we look at the literature, there are many articles which say or which mention that the online teaching is not fully successful yet, especially in our context. There are so many barriers in implementing the online teaching. And here I have 6 main um, articles or research reports which discuss about the barriers in having or conducting online teaching. So I have Aji, Abidah Etel, Murhaus, Daniel, Mailizer, and also Rasmita Dila, and all published this year, 2020, still very new research reports. Okay, we will look at them one by one. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so here are some of the barriers mentioned by Aji and also Murhaus 2020. So for Aji, he mentioned that The barriers cover the limited IT infrastructure, limited knowledge and skills on using IT, and also limited internet access. And for Morehouse, it's not just the tutors' limited experience and skills in using video conferencing system, yeah, which becomes the barrier, but also the lack of the interaction between the teacher and also the students. Usually in the online teaching mode, many students, yeah, rarely talk, and they didn't also uh, participate actively. They just joined the meeting, but they didn't turn the video on. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, so long before this pandemic happened, so Admer already mentioned two types of barriers in online teaching practices. So the two barriers are first order barriers and also second order barriers. So the first order barriers cover the hardware, the access, and also technical support, while the second order barrier include or deals with the pedagogy, belief, and also personal preferences. Well, Pilgrim in 2001 also classified the barriers into two, materials barriers and also non-material barriers. Material barriers cover the lack of information and communication technologies or ICT resources, while non-material barriers cover the teacher's knowledge and also skill. Still, another classification mentioned that there are teacher level barriers, school level barriers, and also system level barriers. Okay, we'll look more about the classification in the next slide. Ms. Tia, please. Okay, thank you. So in 2011, Asare and Pidog mentions that there are four main barriers in the online teaching. Number one is learners barriers, and then teacher barriers, followed by the curriculum and also school barriers. So learners barriers here cover the financial problems, motivations, assessment, isolation from peers, inadequate learning skills, and also experience, affection, and also social domain. While for teachers, barriers cover the knowledge limitations and also assessment challenges. For the curriculum barriers, I mean, um, they cover they deal with the quality, resources, teaching process, and also evaluation. And the last for the school barriers, yeah, they cover the organizational and also structural factors. Next slide, please. Okay, now I would like to invite you to look at the research findings, yeah, by Mailizar et al. 2020. So among those barriers, which one is the most significant? Yeah, Mailizar et al.'s research found that the most significant e-learning barrier was at the student level. And these barriers cover the students' lack of e-learning knowledge, students' lack of access to computer or laptop, students' lack of internet connection, students' lack of access to e-learning, students' lack interest in e-learning. Okay, so very interesting. So students can contribute to the barriers of having or the implementation of online classroom. Okay, next please. Okay, so yeah, again, similarly, Rasmita Dila also found that students, yeah, is one of the sources of the barriers in the implementation of online teaching. So Daniel here try to suggest that part of the institutional responses is reassuring students and parents. So we need to convince the parents and also the students, of course, also the teachers, that yeah, we can do our best in implementing the online classes. Yeah, we can make it a good experience. We can, yeah, we can try our best so that the learners can also learn and master the materials that we are teaching through online mode. So yes, it is part of the responsibility of the institutions to convince the students that, yeah, in this pandemic, we can still learn, yeah, learn better or learn, yeah, as best as we can in the online classrooms. Okay, next please. Now about my research. So my research is a quantitative study, yeah, in the form of survey in which I distributed the questionnaire to 77 students in English Education Department of Pekalongan University. Yeah, so it was conducted early this semester. Okay, next please. Okay, so in the findings and discussion, yes, so based on the findings of the survey, so students had preferences over the teaching platform, materials, types, and also evaluation models in their online classes. So in my study, the students reported that they like the use of Google Classrooms combined with WhatsApp group. And for the materials, they preferred to have PowerPoints, videos, and also PDFs as the main learning materials. And then they love tests and also individual projects, but they dislike daily assignments. Okay, so the last one, it is very interesting. So apart from having those preferences, the students perceive that the lecturer's patience and also engaging delivery of materials as important elements in online classes. So they really expect that the lecturers can be more patient in handling the online classrooms, in teaching the students, and the lecturer should be more considerate and give more understanding to the students situation, because sometimes it is hard to follow the online classes, especially when there is much distraction or problem with the connectivity and signal and so on and so forth. Okay, so let's look um, at the findings in a more detail. Next slide please. Okay, so here is the findings. So preferences of a teaching platform. So all of the participants agreed with the use of Google Classrooms. Yeah. Sorry, could you please return to the previous slide? Okay, yeah.
Sorry,
So
Miss.
it's okay, Miss Tia. So thank you. So all of the respondents in my study agreed with the use of Google Classrooms. And then 77.92% agreed with the use of Google Classrooms. And then
Miss Dwi Agustina, are you still with us?
77%, yeah, they prefer to use the Google Classroom. So what's the issue? Yeah, okay. So my students do not really like the use of Zoom or Google Meet. Okay, next please. Next slide, please, Miss Tia.
This one?
The next slide, please.
This is the next slide, Miss.
Uh, I think I still have like 2 or 3 more slides after this. Oh, but that's okay. I can just explain. So this about the teaching platforms. But for the materials type, there are 5 materials that my students would like to have in the online classes. So it starts with the PowerPoints and also videos, and then PDFs, and also they like to have voice recorded material. So voice recording is one of the materials that they like to have in the online classes. And the last one, the less preferred one is like the documents, Word documents. Yeah, so number one, um, PowerPoints. Yeah, PowerPoints with like the voices or explanation, not just the PowerPoints. And then the video, yeah, they like it. And also the PDFs. Okay, and the last one about the evaluation types. Dear my students,
I'm sorry,
sorry.
Miss. I hate to interrupt, but your time is up.
Okay, yeah. Okay. So let me finish my last sentence. So for the evaluation, my students love to have the tests and also individual projects, but they mind of having burdening assignment. They dislike the assignment. So that's about the my research findings. Thank you very much for your attention. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Miss Dwi Agustina. That was a really engaging presentation. I can relate to it so much because as a student, I do have preferences over learning platforms. So thank you,
Yeah,
Miss.
welcome.
Okay, let's have a big round of applause for Miss Dwi Agustina. Okay, so now we're going to continue to our next presentation entitled The Use of Lyrics Training to Improve Students' Listening for Details in SMA Negeri 8 Yogyakarta. This presentation will be delivered by Miss Teresa Claudia Lukita Rastianing Tias and Miss Patricia Angelina from Sanata Dharma University. Miss Teresa and Miss Patricia, you have 15 minutes and the time is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Miss Tia. Are you going to show the slides? Yeah. Okay, so good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you are all in good condition right now. So thank you very much for giving us this occasion in this beautiful day. My partner and I, Miss Tessa and I, would like to present our research entitled The Use of Lyrics Training to Improve Students' Listening for Details in SMA Negeri 8 Yogyakarta. Next slide, please. Okay, here are the sections that we are going to cover. The first one is the background of the research and then the formulated questions. After that, we will have the theoretical framework, followed by the research method and the results, and then we will close with the conclusions. Next, please. Yeah, so I will start with the research background. Um, I need to inform you that this happened or this took place before the pandemic situation. Yeah, so in this case, listening, we decided to focus on listening because listening is one of the skills in English as a foreign language that has to be mastered. And students find it more difficult to master listening rather than other skills because it's receptive, yeah, other than productive. And we are also having more limited sources for listening exercises if compared to other skills. And then the second point is that most students, even before the pandemic situation, they were using digital learning in their study a lot more than we were in several years ago. Yeah. So we decided to find something digital that can attract their attention. And then my partner had the privilege to experience the intensive teaching practice for 3 weeks in SMA Negeri 8. And during her observations there, she found that many students in SMA Negeri 8 encountered difficulties, especially in listening skill. Yeah. So we decided to choose lyrics training because lyrics training is a digital app and it also has a website in which students can practice their listening skill by filling in the blanks, completing the song lyrics in a video. So we figured that because most of us love music, right? Love songs. So why don't we use those attraction to songs to intrigue them, to attract them to master the listening skill better. Okay. The next one, please. Yeah. So based on the background, we formulated 2 research questions to answer. The first one is how is lyrics training implemented to improve the students' listening for details in SMA Negeri 8? And then the second question is to what extent does lyrics training improve the students' listening for details in SMA Negeri 8? Next slide, please. Okay, the next one is about theoretical framework. So there are four theories, four main theories that we use to answer the questions. For the first research question, we use two theories about lyrics training from Mills and Ziegler. And then for the second research question, we use two theories as well from Nadik on listening comprehension, and then proposed by Goh in 2002 about 5 skills of listening comprehension. The next slide will be about the methodology, which will be presented by my partner, Ms. Tessa. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Pat. Now I would like to talk about research method. So this research used classroom action research by Burns 2010, and there are 4 steps in its cycle. The first one, planning and action, and then observing, and the last one, reflecting. Next slide, please. So next, this is research setting. For research setting, this research was conducted in SMA Negeri 8 Yogyakarta, especially at 11 Mia 2 class. And this research was conducted from February until March 2020. And for research participants, there are 32 students of SMA Negeri 8 Yogyakarta at 11 Mia 2 class. And then for instruments and data gathering techniques, there are observation checklists, tests, and interview. Next slide, please. So this is the research result for research question number 1. In cycle 1 for planning, we're observing the situation of the class, and then we discussing with English teacher, and then the last one we're making lesson plan. And then for acting, we're explaining material about song, and then we conducting pre-test, we were applying lyrics training, and the last one we're conducting post-test. And for observing, we're observing the students while they're using a lyrics training. And for reflecting, we're collecting the student suggestions about the use of lyrics training through a piece of papers. And for in cycle 2, for planning, we're solving problems in cycle 1. And for acting, we're conducting pretest, and then we're applying lyrics training, and the last one we're conducting post test. For observing, we're observing the students while they're using a lyrics training, also to see the improvement. And the last one for reflecting, we're interviewing the students. Next slide, please. So this is the research result for research question number 2. As we can see from the chart, there is a significant improvement between pre-test and post-test in cycle 1 and cycle 2. Next slide, please. So finally, we can conclude that the mean score showed there was a significant difference in 2 cycles, and lyrics training could improve students' listening for details effectively. Next slide, please. So that's all from us. Thank you for your attention, and we would be glad to answer any question you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Teresa and Miss Patricia. That was a really interesting presentation. I do like lyrics training too. It's very fun. And for the questions, later we will give you time to answer them if there's any on the question and answer session. Right. Oh, before that, let's have a big round of applause for Miss Teresa and Miss Patricia. For now, let's proceed to our next presentation entitled Beliefs of Indonesian EFL Teachers and Students Toward Language Learner Autonomy. This presentation will be delivered by Mr. Romi Rambet, Miss Ruth Wompere, and Miss Aldalce Ferdinandus from Cendrawasih University. Mr. Romi, Miss Ruth, and Miss Aldalce, you have 15 minutes. The time is yours.
Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Firstly, we would like to thank the committee of LLTC 2020 that has given us opportunity to take a part, and especially the moderator that has set the room and lead the discussion. I'm Romy Rambet, and with my two other colleagues, Ruth Wompere and Adelce Ferdinandus, we are all from Universitas Cendrawasih Jayapura. I would like to present our study entitled Beliefs of Indonesian EFL Teachers and Students Toward Language Learner Autonomy. The presentation will be in the following. If you have I've already sent the file to the moderator. If you can have it or to display it or
Would you like us to do the share
okay.
screen
Okay.
or
Yeah, actually I have already sent, so I would like to have you then
okay.
display. Or
Please
if
wait
you
for a moment.
okay, yeah, that's it. Uh-huh. Thank you. Yeah. Next slide, please. The presentation will be in the following order. Hopefully, it will not take time. Introduction, discussion, and then the participants in the findings and in the method and finding discussion, conclusion, and question and answers. I speed it up. Okay, thank you. Go to the next slide. Okay, the coronavirus pandemic has forced schools and campuses, as we know, all over the world to close until school reopening in Indonesia by the end of this year, if I'm not mistaken, based on the recent news. Remote learning then becomes a must way for schooling, regardless of problems such as that widely been discussed during this seminar. Computer gadgets that are not affordable for many students in the country, and internet access that may many times interrupt the virtual class, and lack of experience of teachers like me to run online learning, and some other obstacles. Practically, students from primary to higher education might have had a whole year 2020 learning with no teacher physical attendance in the classroom, no real interactions like asking questions directly to the teacher when he or she gets problem, or even group discussion. We will miss it then. In other words, students are urged to learn independently. Next, please. So then independent learners is a concept first introduced by Holek back to 1980s and fundamentally emphasized the autonomy of learners to take responsibility for their own learning, responsibility to determine the learning objectives, to define the contents and development, selection of method and techniques to be used, and conduct their own evaluation of what has been learned. In addition, autonomy in learning is believed as a manifestation of giving opportunities from teachers to students to play active role, more active role. Learner autonomy provides space for individual learners to determine for themselves what they want to learn, where the learning sources are from, how to monitor and evaluate their learnings. I have some scientific research here. Book and Al-Busaidi found that the biggest problem actually came from the student side. They believe that low understanding of the importance of developing learner autonomy, the skills for independent study, as well as taking responsibility for learners' learning would be the obstacles of promoting LA, learner autonomy. Lenkanawati 2016 and 2017 also figure out some problems for students, lack of experience, and the demand for studying only for the national exams, and the level of English proficiency of students can be problematic too. While for the teachers, of course, the time allocation that has been set in the curriculum and syllabus do not then give chance for teachers to develop this method. Thank you. Go to the next slide, please. Okay, based on the literature results of previous scientific studies, as well as problems with the application of learner autonomy in the FL class, the purpose of this study is first to identify lectures perceptions of LA. Secondly, also find out the perceptions of English language education students toward the principles of independent learners in teaching and learning process. Next, please. The method, this research use a quantitative descriptive approach. Quantitative data were collected using a questionnaire. There were 15 lecturers as the participants and 120 students. They are all from English education program in Cendrawasih University. And we used, we took the study couple months ago during the pandemic. Instruments, we use a questionnaire with 5 Likert scale designed and developed by Bor and Al Busaidi 2012. Then deals with technical, psychological, political, and socio-cultural perspective of learner autonomy. And finally, we analyze after get back the questionnaire using SPSS. Next, please. Yes, after we got the questionnaire, and then we will explain the descriptively the findings. Okay. In this study, the respondents' perceptions, when I'm talking about respondents, both English lecturers and students, were obtained by giving a questionnaire. And then the questionnaire, of course, if we see I make it short, technical perspective deals with learning facilities, and then psychological perspective dealing with age, motivation, and so forth, political opportunities, choices, decisions, and social cultural perspective deals with background, collaboration, and problems related. Next, please. Yes, next slide, please. Okay, it's like mathematics, yeah. Okay. Anyway, I will then try to describe the table. The psychological, the technical perspective first. Interesting finding regarding respondents' perceptions of LA principle. It is known that from technical perspective, the data that we can see together, the majority of lecturers, 73.34% agree that learner autonomy can be developed. 73, quite big number, through independent learning activities in libraries, studying outside the classroom, doing independent assignments in independent access centers, and outside class assignments that involve using the internet. In fact, this last activity using the internet was identified by 93.3% of lecture respondents as having the potential to develop students' autonomy. So in a big favor for the use of internet for the in perspective of lecturers. While interestingly, we found that our students, our mahasiswa, feel that they prefer using library, which is then quite interesting because as we know that now that building, the library is not as it was, which is used by students to access materials. But then in terms of learner autonomy, they prefer using library. The question will be then maybe it happens when they have problems to access the material using internet, like the previous obstacles, and also maybe the surrounding or environment that they have back home or in the rent house that is not supportive for their study. So they prefer library. That's the important things. And when we ask whether the students' autonomy means learning without a lecturer, 60% of the lecturer agree with that principles. On the other hand, the majority of students think that no, the involvement of lecturers in LA is still necessary. So about 40%. So there are two distinctions. Learning without teachers, yeah, lecturers agree. Okay, that is the principles is good, but not for the students. They it means that it indicates that the presence of a teacher in learning is seen differently from the two groups. Lectures concept the total students independence required by LA is in line with the principle of teacher abstention. So the absence of teacher is widely the same as this learner autonomy principle. But students now, students as well as lecturers agree that full students independence, but the guidance of the teacher is still needed. Next, we go to the technical perspective. Would you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. The psychological perspective provides a view of how factors such as students' age, student-centered learning, motivation, and self-evaluation that then ultimately affect the success of students in learning. As shown in the table, students of all ages are believed by the majority of lecturers. So LA can be promoted, implemented to all students, from all ages. And on the other hand, and the majority, 66%, agree with that one. And also the students, 68%. So they have a similar understanding of the principles. Interestingly, quite a number of lecturers, 40%, 40 strongly disagree with the statement regarding the difficulties students could face when promoting students' autonomy. Those who were fluent in the language compared to the beginners. So the more fluent the students, the more easier for to implement to promote LA. So they, sorry, the lecturers disagree with that one. In their perception, the level of language proficiency, in this case, English, students influence LA promotion. So on the other hand, quite a lot of students agree with this statement. So there are two different views or beliefs of lecturers and students about the English proficiency level. Next, when asked about the role of a lecturer in promoting LA from psychological perspective, they share the same ideas. Okay, next to please to political perspective, psychological. Yeah, okay, thank you. With regard to the socio-cultural perspective, political perspective, and sorry, I will then go to socio-cultural perspective. Students show that disapproval consistently 60% with the perception of unsuitable for non-Westerners. So there is a belief that if you are a non-Western student, the learner autonomy doesn't suit you. So now both respondents, teachers, and students, they don't agree. So it means no matter what race or what part of a country you are from, LA is still the same to be implemented. The next one, can I have can I have the next? You have problem with this one? Yeah, cultural perspective. This is interesting. Both of the group still have the same, yeah, as I mentioned before. And now can we go to the conclusion, so to save time? Yes, the study actually aims to explore beliefs, and then we can see from the technical perspective, lecturers and students confirm the importance of independent learning activities in developing independent learners. Student activities that use the internet for learning are favored by the group of lecturers, while independent learning activities in the library are preferred by students group. The perceptions of both are divided, on the principles of independence of students in LA, in learner autonomy, where lecturers believe LA means learning without a teacher, while students are against it. So difference. From a psychological perspective, we can conclude that lecturers and students do not believe that age influences the development of learner autonomy. The similarity in their perceptions is also on teacher assistants in developing LA. So it means LA supports for language learner success, yes. Students-oriented learning, yes. And the authority of students to evaluate the learning, yeah, they have a same agreement on it. Inequality of opinion between the two groups occurs in matters relating to language proficiency. So they have different in view in as I told you before, language proficiency level. In the context of VFL, which is the view of lecturers affects the success in implementing LA, while students do not consider proficiency as a barrier. So they think it's okay. Politically,
I'm sorry, sir.
yes.
I hate to interrupt you, but
Okay
your
then.
time is up.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Anyway, thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Mr. Romi Rambert, for the really interesting presentation. Now I understand why teachers and students are often not in the same boat. I understand clearly now. Let's have an applause for Mr. Romi. So we have seen the presenters just now. Now we're going to start with the question and answer session. As we can see, we already have several questions on the chat box. I'm going to start with the first one. It's for, hold on. It's for Miss Dwi Agustina, if I'm mistaken. Is this right? Ah, yeah. From Mr. Christian Wijaya of Sanata Dharma University. The question is, to what extent did you feel certain that all students engaging in your online class have successfully developed their attitudes as autonomous, resilient, and proactive learners without the continual presence of their teachers? Thank you. Miss Dwi Agustina, you may have your time.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Tia, for reading the question, and thank you for Mr. Christian for the question. So, yeah, I do believe that all of the students who are joining the online classes are developing to be more autonomous learners, no matter how slow or how fast the development is. So when we are talking about the autonomy, there are two types of autonomy classified by Smith 2003. The first one is the weak autonomy, and the second one is the strong autonomy. So for the students having the weak autonomy, they are considered as lacking the autonomy. So they still need some training to be autonomous learners. But for the strong, autonomy, the students are regarded as already autonomous. So they can keep or they can follow any activities which promote the uh, autonomy, higher degree of autonomy. So I think in every classes we have these two types of students. So yeah, the speed of the development of autonomy may differ greatly from one student to the other. But as a language teacher, I do believe that all students proceed to be more independent and more autonomous in the online teaching and learning activities. So that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Dwi Agustina, for the answer. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the next question. It's for Miss Patricia and Miss Teresa. From Mr. Kristia Wijaya again from Sanata Dharma University. I'm still curious about CIR method utilized in your research. How about if we as researchers fail to make significant improvements regarding students' listening skills? Did we need to retake the cycle? If it is so, is there any limited numbers for the repetitions of these cycles? Thank you, Miss Patricia and Miss Teresa. You may have your time to answer.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Tia, and thank you, Mr. Christian Wijaya, for the question.
Ada about speaker toh. Satu empat.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I will start first, and then Ms. Tessa perhaps would like to add more later. Thank you for the question once again. It's about the CARB method. Yeah. If we as researchers fail to make significant improvements regarding students' listening skills, okay, first of all, the improvement does not have to be significant. We implement CAR because we would like to try to solve the problem. So when we see a problem in our class, and then we try our best to find a solution to that problem. If it is not successful yet, it means that we have to evaluate in the reflection stage. Yeah. So we need to evaluate what went wrong or what makes it not successful, and then we revise it again in the next cycle. And originally there are no limitation to the cycles. Yeah, so if you have all the time in the world, I mean, if you are working in that school and you are free to access the classes, then of course you can implement more than 2 cycles. But because my partner had a limited time in her intensive teaching practice in SMA 8, therefore we only had time to conduct 2 cycles. Yeah, so we just did what we can within during those 3 weeks. So we can only do 2 cycles at most. Did we need to retake the cycle? Yeah, once again, if you have the time and the access, of course, we can continue the cycle until satisfaction results are obtained. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Patricia and also Miss Teresa for answering the question. And yeah, I noticed that we still have another question here, and I'm sure that you probably have other questions for Miss Romirambe too, and maybe some of you wanted to ask but is shy or something. You can send your questions to their emails. We have it on the program book. You can send your questions to our presenters, and I'm sure they'll be glad to answer them. Here's the link to the program book, as you can see it. And now we have reached the end of our session. And after this, we're going to start with parallel session 4 right away at 11:30. You may stay here, or it's up to you actually. I would prefer if you stay here with me. But before all of us leave, and then don't forget that we're going to have our 5th and 6th keynote speakers after the lunch break. So stick around to join the rest of the conference. Now, before we end this, let us take a picture. So I want everyone to open your cameras so we can take our virtual, group selfie. Mr. Operator, are you ready?
Of course, ready.
Okay. Everyone, open your camera and show us your beautiful faces. Okay. Okay. Are you guys ready? Mr. Operator, please count.
Okay. So, 1, 2, 3. Once again. 1, 2, 3.
Okay. Do you still need more?
Enough. It's enough. Okay, thank you guys.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming. Enjoy the rest of the conference. See you. You may stay here or join another room.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thank you, presenters.
Thank you, Miss Tia.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.